On tonight's episode of Mr. Norris's In Case You Missed It, we look at the three branches of government, the executive, legislative, and judicial, who makes them up, and what they do. Hey, hello, hi, and what is up, everybody? It's your host, Mr. Norris, with the good hair. And tonight we're going to be talking about the three branches of government, the executive, legislative, and judicial branch, who makes those branches up, and exactly what are some of their responsibilities. All right, now let's start with the Founding Fathers. When they created this form of government, they were looking to establish something known as separation of powers, meaning they didn't want the power of government to be in the hands of one person or just a few people, but a large group of people spread out over three branches who shared power and responsibility. The reason for doing this is that they had just overthrown Great Britain not too long before this, and that was a government that was a monarchy, a tyrannical form of government, that all the power was consolidated, and they wanted to try to avoid that going forward. Makes sense. All right, let's start with the executive branch. Who makes up the executive branch? Well, you have the president, the vice president, and the president's cabinet. All right, the president's cabinet. What is that? And no, it is not where they keep their oregano and cinnamon, although they might have a cabinet for that. The president's cabinet is a group of trusted appointees or advisors that he appoints to help him run the country, him or her, I should say, run the country. Now, the federal government is responsible for certain departments that help out the country, such as the Department of Treasury, Department of Defense, Department of Education, Department of Agriculture, and the president can't be in 50 places at once, nor does the president necessarily know anything about any of these departments. So what they do is they hire trusted people to advise them that are good in these certain fields and report back to them and help them and assist them run the country. Okay, that's the president's cabinet. Now, how long can a president serve? They can serve for a total of 8 years or 2 4-year terms. Those terms do not have to be consecutive. A president can win an election, serve for 4 years, lose an election, be retired, go hunting, go fishing, watch Martha Stewart, then win another election and serve for another 4 years. That has actually happened before with our president, Grover Cleveland. What are some of the powers of the executive branch? Well, as far as the lawmaking process, the executive branch carries out the laws, meaning that they sign them into place. Congress will create bills and laws, bring them forward, put them on the president's desk, and if he or she likes or approves these laws, they can sign them into action. Now, what are some of the other powers of the executive branch? Well, they implement our foreign policy. Basically, the president decides how we're going to interact with other countries around the world. They can negotiate treaties with other countries. And another thing that the president is responsible for, which is really interesting, is that they are the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Okay, now, the president doesn't handle every single little decision on a day-to-day basis for the military. That would be too much. We have generals who do that kind of thing. But as far as any really big decisions, those are either presidential orders or they have to be run by the president. He's the head honcho. He has the final say. Okay, so for example, if we invade a country, that's something that the president would have to decide. A really recent example would be when President Barack Obama ordered the killing of Osama bin Laden, right? That was something that was cleared by him and he approved that. Another example of being the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, another power that the president would have with that is being able to drop or fire or launch nuclear weapons, which God forbid that never happens. But considering the times that we live in, kind of scary, right? Listen, little rocket man, I will bring fire and fury upon you like you've never seen before. All right, now all kidding aside, seriously, let's hope that that doesn't happen. Let's move on to the legislative branch. Congress is made up of the Senate and House of Representatives. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that senators, each state has equal representation. Each state has 2 senators, and the House of Representatives is based on population. Now, senators can serve for a 6-year term, and there are no term limits, so they can keep winning elections and serve for as long as they want to. Members of the House of Representatives, they serve a 2-year term and then must win another election. And again, still no term minimums or maximums. They can serve as long as they'd like to. They can serve forever. So if you've ever seen a picture of senators or congressmen and thought, they look like a bunch of old geezers, like they've been around forever, that's because they have. I like to think of them as the Walking Dead. Coral, we gotta stick together. Mitch McConnell, we gotta stick together. All right, I'm sorry, that's the last bad impression. I'm done, no more. Okay. Now, what are some of the powers of the legislative branch? Well, as far as the lawmaking process go, as I said earlier, they're responsible for making the laws. Okay, they draft bills in Congress, they create the laws. What are some other things that they do? They approve the national budget, how much money we're going to spend. They also impose taxes on the people and decide how to gather up money for the federal government to spend. And another power for Congress that is kind of forgotten is they have the power and right and responsibility to declare war. That's how it's supposed to work. A lot of people think that the president declares war. It's Congress's job to declare war. Now, does that always happen? No. The last time that Congress officially declared war was World War II. Have we had wars since then? Yeah, so sometimes we actually don't even follow our own rules, which is kind of crazy to think about. Let's move on to the judicial branch. The judicial branch is made up of the Supreme Court. And on the Supreme Court, we have 9 judges or Supreme Court justices, just basically a fancy way of saying that. 9. Why do we have 9? Well, we have an odd number, so then that way, if they're ever ruling on something or deciding something, they're never going to tie. There's always going to be some kind of an outcome. Supreme Court justices can serve for life. So again, going back to the Congress thing, if you've ever looked at a picture of Supreme Court justices and thought, a bit aged, that's because, a lot of them are really, really old. What are some of the responsibilities of the judicial branch? Well, they review the laws. Basically, what they do is they hold up the Constitution in one hand and laws in the other hand, and they go, we'll allow it. Looks okay. They make sure that new laws passed don't go against the Constitution or that they are unconstitutional. They have to match what our founding fathers laid out for us. Other powers of the Supreme Court, they review cases involving federal law. They review disputes between the states and any case that might have something to do with the Constitution. So if you're ever sitting on trial in the Supreme Court, it's a pretty serious matter. What you gonna do when Ruth Bader Ginsburg comes running wild on you? Yeah, look out for Ruthie B. Hopefully you're never involved in a Supreme Court case because that's, like I said, pretty serious. But that's what they do. And those are the powers of the 3 branches. Remember, whenever you're looking at government and what they do, it's not fair to just blame one person or a couple people. They have separation of powers. They are all equally responsible for how this country operates. Hopefully you learned some stuff there. If you like the video, please like, comment, subscribe. Any of those would be just fine. Remember that history is life. And in the words of George Washington, the surest basis for public happiness is knowledge. So go out there and get some, everybody. Have a good night.